This is the rise and fall calculation. The table looks like this. We have our points, back sides, intermediate sides, four sides, rise, fall, reduced height, correction, adjusted height, and final height. And in order to calculate this table, we need to have the totals at the bottom, the rise, fall, reduced height, correction, and adjusted height. And so the first thing you must note is that the back side is always positive, the intermediate side is positive, fall side is negative, rise is positive, fall is negative. And so we are gonna start by adding the totals. The total for the back side is gonna be 1,671 plus 1,292, and that will give us a positive 2,963. Here at the bottom, we must always put the signs, and our numbers must always be to 3 decimal places. And so this is the answer. And then we add our intermediate sides. It's going to be 2,216 plus 1,768 plus 2,767, and that is positive 6,751. And then we add the four sides. 1,712 plus 1,841, it's negative 3,553. Remember, four side is negative. And then after that, we subtract the total for the four side from the total for the back side. So we're going to say this 2,963 minus 3,553, and that will be negative 0,590. And then after that, we go to the final height. We're gonna say 55,858 minus the top, which is 55,238, and this will give us a positive 0,620. And then after that, we calculate our rise and fall. And the formula for rise and fall is the backside minus IS, if that's what we have, and then also backside minus foresight, if that is what we have. So you can see that after backside, sometimes we have IS and sometimes we have the foresight. So if we have IS, we are gonna use that. And when we have foresight, we use that to calculate our rise or fall. And so in this case, we have the intermediate side. So we're gonna say 1,671 minus 2,216, and this is a negative 0,545. And you know that fall is negative, so we are gonna record that under fall, but without the sign. So this minus this, we write it in the same line as the last number we used in the calculation. So it's this minus this, we're gonna write next to it 0,545. And then now we have two intermediate sides. We have no back side, we have no four sides here. We are gonna use them. So we're just gonna say the top one minus the bottom one, which is 2,216 minus 1,768. And that is a positive 0,448. Because it's positive, we record it under rise. So it's 0,448. And in these calculations, it's not this minus this and this minus this, no. The last number that you used, you carry it over to the next number. Subtract, 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 just like that. So we're gonna say this minus this, it gives us this. We write the answer in the same line as the last number we used in the calculation. And then we come again, we say intermediate side minus foresight. And remember, like, the calculations don't go like this, they go like this. So you must always make sure that the two numbers that you are using in the calculation are like this. Or another way to understand it is that from one backside to the next foresight, that is one set up. So that means your calculations will be like this. You can never have this minus this because that is not in one setup. And then for the next setup, we have from backside to foresight. So in this whole calculation, you are gonna use these for the setup and then these numbers for the setup. And the numbers that you are calculating must always have this kind of line. And so now we are left with this minus this for this setup. So we are gonna say 1,768 minus 1,712. And that is 0,056. And it's positive, so we're gonna write it under rise. And then for this setup, we are done with the first one. Now we are on to the next setup. We are gonna say 1,292 minus 2,767, and that is negative 1,475. Since it's negative, we're gonna record that under fall. So we're gonna say 1,475. And then now we must calculate for this. We're gonna say 2,767 minus 1,841, and that is a positive 0,926. So we are done with the rise and fall. Now we are gonna calculate the reduced height. So what we do is that we take this and bring it all the way here, because the benchmark is a known point. So this final height means we are not gonna adjust it, we are not gonna correct it, and it's not gonna be reduced or anything. It's the height that we are using, so we just carry it over to here. So the adjusted height is gonna be the same, 238, no correction, 55,238 is the same. And then from this we are gonna calculate the rest of the reduced heights. In order to calculate reduced height, you add or subtract depending on what you have. So if we have fall, we are just gonna say reduced height minus the fall, and then we get the next reduced height. If we have rise, we have that reduced height plus the rise, and then we get the next one until we are done with all of them. So we have 55,238, and then we have fall here. So it's gonna be minus 0,545, and that is 54,693. Next we have a rise, so we're gonna say this plus the rise plus 0,448, and that gives us 55,141. Next we have another rise, so we add it plus 0,056, and we get 55,197. Next we have a fall, so we subtract 1,475, and the answer is 53,722. Next we have a rise, so we add it, it's plus 0,926, and the answer is 54,648. So we have filled in the reduced heights. Now let's calculate the totals for the rise and fall. The same way we did for backside and foresight, we're just gonna say 0,448 plus 0,056 plus 0,926. And the answer is positive 1,430. And then for fall, we have 0,545 plus 1,475, negative 2,020. And then we subtract the negative from the positive. We're going to say minus 2,020, 1,430. 1,430 minus 2,020, that is negative 0,59. This last point is a known point, so it has a height. We're just gonna take that height and put it here as an adjusted height because we are not gonna adjust it. And then for this last correction, we are just gonna say the right hand side minus the left hand side, then we get the correction. So it's gonna be 55,858 minus 54,648, and that gives us a positive 1,210. Because this is positive, the rest of the corrections are obviously going to be positive. If it was negative, the rest of the corrections were going to be negative. So we just put the sign, and then afterwards we use the formula for the correction, which is the correction is equal to this correction that we have calculated over the number of 4 sides multiplied by the 4 sides that we are calculating. So this is just gonna be the number. If we are on the first 4 side, we're gonna say 1. If we are on the second 4 side, we're gonna say 2. If we are on the third 4 side, we're gonna say 3. And this is obviously this, and the number of 4 sides we are gonna calculate in the table how many 4 sides we have. So this is how we do it. We have 1,210 over the number of 4 sides. How many 4 sides do we have? 1, 2. We have 2 4 sides. And now we want the correction for the first correction. So we're gonna say the correction is for side 1. And remember, these corrections, the way they are distributed is per setup. This is one setup, it's gonna have the same correction. And this is another setup, so it's gonna have the same correction. So this setup has this 4 sides. So the first 4 side that we are gonna calculate and say 1, it's gonna have the same correction. And this is 4 side number 2. So this whole setup is going to have the same correction. So we're just going to say 1,210 divided by 2 times 1 for the first correction, and that is 0,605. We're just gonna write that in line with the first correction, 0,605. And we are gonna put it for the rest of the things, because from the 4 side all the way to the other readings, that's one setup, as you can see. So the rest of them are just gonna be 0,6. Now we are on the second 4 side, and the answer is 1,210, which is this. So we're just gonna write the same thing for the other corrections, because this falls under the same setup. And then after this, in order to find our adjusted heights, we're just gonna say this plus this, this plus this. If it was negative, we're just gonna say the reduced height minus the correction. And so that is what we are gonna do. So we're gonna say 54 0.693 plus 0.605, and that is 55.298. Then we have 55.141 plus 0.605, and that is 55.746. Then we have 55.197 plus 0.605, and that is 55.802. Then we have 53.722 plus 1.210, and that is 54.932. So we are done with our adjusted height, and now we're gonna say the last adjusted height, which is 55.858 minus the first adjusted height, and it's gonna give us a positive 0.620. Okay. The last reduced height, 54.648 minus the first reduced height, which is 55.238, means negative 0.590. And then we are gonna calculate the linear closing error, or LCE. And how we do that, we can simply just take the opposite sign of the correction and say it's negative 1.210. Or we can just say, for the correction, we said the right hand side minus the left hand side, and we got this. But for the linear closing error, we say the left hand side minus the right hand side, and so obviously the sign will be negative to what we got here. So that is the LCE, and then the whole table is completed.